collaborators rather that would want to go inside the university premises, they are subject to approval from the department of the college, if applicable also to the OICN. This is the Office of International Cooperation and Networking. Or if applicable, this would be to the Social Development Research Center, and it will have permission coming from the Office of the Vice President for Higher Education, as well as that of the Office of Vice President for Administration. Travel activities, as I've said, is generally allowed. It requires a faculty research travel request form that has to be routed. And again, the travel routes and destinations are only to low-risk areas. Now, this particular permission is not new because way back in March 24, 2020, our president has already issued a memo related to off-campus activities and travel restrictions. And it was indicated in the memo that failure to declare travel information to Xavier University may be considered a violation of the university's code of conduct. So if you look at this travel form, you will see that you will be required of the destination, the quarantine status of the destination area. And then very important is the notarized travel waiver and the signed declaration of understanding. So this is the look of the declaration or the travel waiver and the signed declaration of understanding. Okay, so yeah, okay. So this is a fillable PDF file template that is available in the research website. Okay, so let's talk about student research. Student research may be in graduate, undergraduate, and basic education. So student research are mostly conducted as a final requirement for completing a degree program or required from research subjects from the higher education cluster or research subjects final outputs. Or in the basic education, this can be research-related activities that presently do not require research ethics clearance, but are included in our interim guidelines. Okay, so what would be included in the guidelines? Those research that already have research ethics clearance and research is already underway. Those that have department and college level approval but have not been submitted yet for ethics clearance, and those new research proposals still to be submitted for department and college level approval prior to submission for ethics clearance through the Research Ethics Office. Okay, so there are 3 classifications. More than ever, now during this time of the pandemic, every effort shall be done by the department, college, or university structures and mechanisms to help graduating undergraduate and graduate students doing research to complete their final research requirements despite the challenging conditions of the pandemic. Therefore, faculty research advisors are enjoined to really work closely with student researchers or advisees. Work closely. That's I think the term. But before we go any further now to the special considerations for graduating students, whether graduate or undergraduate students, let's take up muna the overarching advisory of the CHED. So let me read. The special considerations listed below are to be implemented only in conjunction with the provisions of the Commission on Higher Education's COVID Advisory Number 7, which refers to the guidelines for the prevention, control, and mitigation of the spread of the coronavirus disease 2019 in higher education institutions. This was issued on May 24, 2020. So this is an excerpt from the advisory. Okay, so the advisory says that in areas under ECQ, MECQ, and GCQ, HEIs are advised to observe the following guidelines, etc. No? So following students, graduating students who need to complete the academic requirements, students whose subjects are scheduled in the summer, students taking graduate studies. So even the graduate studies are included in this advisory set 7. Let me move on to letter C. UJT and internship programs, foreign and local, remain suspended until ECQ, MECQ, GCQ, and MGCQ has been lifted. But I will focus on this one. However, for HEIs in MGCQ areas, in-campus OJT and internship programs can be authorized provided there is strict compliance with physical distancing and health protocols. So, assuming that we already have strict compliance, our university has guidelines for strict compliance with physical distancing and other health protocols, then we can be allowed to have in-campus OJT and internship programs. And this is also where I think that research can fall under. No? So, but this can only be under MGCQ, community quarantine status, etc. If this is available, meaning if this condition is present, then we can do or we can observe, or we can implement the special considerations for graduating students where research activities are related. Okay, so hence the following special considerations can only be implemented if there are changes or current updates or favorable community quarantine status unlike or not covered by the advisory. So the guidelines that I am about to enumerate below is a ready course of action. Okay, so we have prepared in the event that we are able to have in-campus or off-campus activities related to class activities. Okay, so one is travel activities. So students would now be able to travel. However, this would require a student research travel request form where signatories will have to be present. For example, permission coming from parents and guardians.
Recording in progress.
To be noted by the department chairs and college dean, and then approved also by the university president. The accompanying documents may be necessary are the following: travel itinerary plan with supporting documents, the travel exit clearance from appropriate government agency. Again, the travel activities is in coincidence or in conjunction with the university president's memo related to off-campus activities. Okay, so this is the look of the student research travel request form, where the student lead researcher has to indicate the same requirements that were available for faculty researchers. Okay, so the signatories that are required. Okay, so for the two activities that can be done, face-to-face interactions and then access to university campus facilities, still we need to have permission from parents and guardians, faculty advisors, etc. And then basically the same. No? And we need to have, in the observance or in the implementation of these activities, there has to be evidence of health safety practices during the activity to be verified during research defense or final project presentations. Okay, so this is the look of the student research activity request form. These documents shall become requirements for final defense or presentation. So you will see that you can do face-to-face interaction, you can do research travel, or you can have access to university facilities, and then you just have to indicate what activity that you would want to be permitted to do. Okay, and again, this will have to have permission from parents. Okay, now if there are changes to the research methodology involving human participants and the use of invertebrate animals, the department technical panels need to be reconvened for approval of the revised protocol, and a request for amendment be done through the Research Ethics Office. I already mentioned this one as a general guideline. So, what about effectivities of the interim guidelines? The guidelines was approved in early August of 2020. So the effectivity was the whole year of school year 2020-21, and then to be reassessed by the next school year, and this has already been assessed and this is still being implemented. So this is due, the effectivity is due to the uncertainty, the possible shifting pronouncements of community quarantine status, and then also so as not to disrupt negatively impact the experimental conditions of the research. Okay, so in summary, highly discouraged activities due to the pandemic are the following: in-person data collection activities, access to university campus facilities, as well as travel activities. To be able to comply with or to be able to do activities, especially for graduating students now related to research activities. There are 4 fillable PDF forms that you can avail of or that you can use. No? So one is on faculty research travel. Obviously, this is for faculty, but uh, there's also a notarized travel waiver and signed declaration. This is for both faculty and students. And then number 3 is a student research activity form and a student research travel request form. Okay, so I hope I have explained everything in detail. If you have questions that you would like to raise, I would be happy to answer them. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Rabanes, for that guidance. No? So I think Dr. Rabanes is ready to answer your questions. If there are questions from among the participants, please ask them. Now would be the time to ask them. So while waiting for them to questions, may I read from the message box? We have a question from Engineer Miraflor. I guess this has something to do with the travel requirements, Sir Julo. No? Are laboratory activities also covered here? Like, for example, a group plans to conduct a hands-on activity on an agreed venue, presumably outside of campus, Sir Julo?
Yes, ma'am, because we saw really the importance of hands-on in our class. Now, this is not actually a research. That's why this is an ordinary laboratory activity. That's why I question that. If laboratory activities is also covered in these guidelines, because in some ways, these activities are quite similar to research. So that's why I'm raising the question.
Okay, thank you, Sir Jolo, for your question. No? But since this is not related to research, but similar, I think. I think Sir Herx can also or would be able to answer this. But generally, we are only allowed in-campus and off-campus activities if we are allowed by CHED. So we need to ask permission from CHED. Because as of now, the advisory number 7 is still effective or being implemented. Sir Hertz, would you have additional information?
Thank you,
ma'am. I agree with you entirely, Ma'am Heidi. So, Sir Julo, we still have to follow CHED advisory number 7 in that. And then, so therefore, it hinges on the quarantine classification, the current quarantine classification of our location. So far, it would not be allowed yet. And it's not automatic. It is not automatic that if the quarantine classification would change, it's not automatic because we still have to submit application form to CHED to ask for permission. So that's the thing with that.
Thank you, Dean.
Sir Hertz and Dr. Rabanes, may I also have this question? This was raised by a student during pre-registration, and it has, I think, some relation to the question asked earlier by Engineer Miraflor. The student was asking, well, 2 students actually from the chemical engineering department and from the mechanical engineering department. One student was asking about the conduct of laboratory activities, research, and the other one was asking about activities. For example, I think this has something to do with research in the mechanical engineering department, where we'll be requiring required to fabricate, I think, equipment. So will this be, I think the question is, will these activities be allowed under the guidelines, interim guidelines?
The overarching guideline that we need to follow is the advisory number 7. So this actually prevents all of us to do in-campus and off-campus, even off-campus, whether the faculty advisor knows about the activity or not. But we are cautioned not to do in-campus and off-campus under that advisory. So it's a bit, not just a bit, but it's a very limiting advisory, but unfortunately, we have to adhere to that advisory. Yeah, but I think Sir Herx would have, I don't know if this has been discussed, katong Sir Herx, limited face-to-face permission that you requested from CHED. But again, it is also dictated by the quarantine status of the city. So, maraginana ang ano. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. So if I may add, so there is a recent development when it comes to holding limited face-to-face classes during the time of pandemic. So news has came out that our president of the Philippines has signed that particular guideline intended for engineering and technology programs and other programs that require the development and demonstration of actual skills, diba? Like for example, the skills that we develop and demonstrate in laboratory activities, whether it is just purely instructional lab or research. However, muni ang kuan karon, muni ang kulang pa karon. The policies and guidelines or the IRR bale for this particular law or permission yang gisayna ni Presidente Duterte, it's not yet out. It's not yet out. So therefore, dili pa ta makalihok. But for the College of Engineering, at least, we are now preparing for it. Of course, the first thing that you have to do is really to identify which particular classes would we decide to be applied for the possible limited face-to-face for the second sem. Okay, so we are still gathering the data, and then as of now, the department chairs or some of the department chairs actually are expressing the possibility that FYPS, especially for those projects na nag-require dito of actual demonstration of the product, could be included in this application. Not all, I tell you, because we have already decided man sa atong FYPS, and then most of the departments have shifted to the simulation kind of research or FYPS and other kinds that do not require face-to-face interaction. Okay.
Sir Herx, may I also forward an information that, for example, the chemistry department, the BS Chem program, is also requesting through the professional organization of the chemistry or the chemist that this limited face-to-face may be allowed for not only, I think, for the BS Chem program, but as well as the natural sciences mga courses. So there is work on that. There is ongoing work that will actually enable us in the near future to go to limited face-to-face, which will include research activities in and off campus. So we are hopeful that the graduating students can still be, avail of that kanang provision or that possibility within the coming months. So hopefully.
Hopefully.
Thank you very much for those input from Dean Cascon and Dean Rabanes. Now, perhaps last question for this session, perhaps later, after, if we still have time, we can more of our questions. But there's a question from the message box. Guidelines for the student research is the same if the student is fully vaccinated.
Unfortunately, way back in 2020, this has not been factored in. No? So even the advisory number 7 of CHED did not also factor in vaccinated students or faculty members. So I do not have an answer to this because it's not included in the guidelines. Unfortunately, wala pa. We may have to think about this. But again, we're under the scrutiny of CHED, so we will need to ask permission, as always.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so thank you very much for the inputs and thank you for the questions. So perhaps at this time we can move on to another interesting and relevant topic that will be discussed to us and by the university's research ethics coordinator, Dr. Faustino Jr. Pox Tarongoy. Sir Pox?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me and allowing me the opportunity to help you in your onboarding session by explaining the research ethics process. Okay, so without much ado, I'll start na, Ma'am Yaying. Yeah.
Sure, Sir Pox.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Before I share, di man siguro, sideline lang the information. Your research coordinator actually was formerly the coordinator also for the research ethics. So if I cannot explain or I miss some things with regards to the research ethics in the process, or there's not enough time to ask or answer your questions, you can direct your questions to Ma'am Yaying. Kasi she is also very able to answer also your questions. Okay, so do you see now my presentation? Kita na?
Yes, Sir Fox.
Okay.
Run mode siguro, Sir Fox.
Sorry, sir?
Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
It's already in presentation mode. Just give myself. Okay. So just to overview of our terms. So when we we have the same understanding. So when we talk about research, it refers to an activity really, and the main aim of that really activity is to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge. Whatever we discover or whether we innovate, it always develops to it also always is aimed to new area of knowledge or new body of knowledge. Okay, principles, theories, or even relationships. And so when we talk about ethics in research, okay, we are referring to a particular framework of principles and guidelines, which gives us a direction on what do you mean by responsible conduct of research. And not only in the conduct of the research, but also in the use of that outcome, responsible use also of the outcome that arises or results from your research. So it gives us therefore like the moral guidelines or moral compass in the performance of the research. My presentation this morning, you will be bombarded with so much information, so I have to warn you with that. There's a lot of things to talk about with research ethics, but I will attempt to capsulize them. But that's why, because of it's a large, and it's a complex also area, we can actually have another venue for this in which we can go deeper into the aspects of research ethics. So I'm going to present here the why you need to undergo research ethics review by understanding the importance of research ethics, first of all. What are the components that comprises an ethical research? Then I will introduce to you the office and the ethics board, which is responsible for this process. And I will explain to you the review process itself by explaining first what are the possible categories for your proposal to be reviewed, the procedure in undergoing the review from the submission to the decision, and then special mention about with consideration sa mga engineering researches, no? So criteria for exemption and also consideration on if ever your research needs to be reviewed, what are the components in your proposal that are going to be reviewed. And the reason why I need also to explain is that during your writing of your proposal and before your submission to the Research Ethics Office, these elements should be already considered, especially if your research will involve human participation. So you should incorporate already these elements for ethical considerations. And then last but not the least, probably this might be also very or essential for you is since we are in this time of pandemic wherein face-to-face interaction is prohibited or limited, and we are only left to recourse with online and digital tools. So what are the ethical guidelines for this? General considerations for ethical guidelines for when we use online and digital tools. Okay, I hope this, okay. So when we say research ethics, we need to observe, not just observe, but really incorporate into our mentality, or our attitude. Why we need to observe, or why do we need to recognize the importance of research ethics? Because in any activity that we do, there's always, we have to be guided by what is the right thing to do. Okay. And in this case, in particular, we conduct research because, especially when we are involving human participants or research participants, we need to primarily protect their dignity, their welfare, and their rights. And not only for the welfare of your research participants, but in the sense also your research becomes ethical if your data is obtained honestly. So there is that integrity when you get your data. So that means even, for example, your data is a result of from an interview from certain respondents, and you have to make sure that you ethically did your that activity, and it therefore gives you that protection, that your data is not manufactured, and the data or respected the value or the welfare of your respondents. And consequently, that will also result to the credibility of your research, credibility of you as a researcher. It will also give you that important trust, the professional trust that you are when you do research and if ever you publish your research, then that means that it's credible, it is worthy, trustworthy, and then as a person, you will be recognized that you are not making up your data, and that you ethically obtain your data if you took it from human participants. And at the same time, you being accountable, that you are responsible for what you are doing with your research, and be accountable if there are any possible problems or adverse consequential events that arise from your research. Then you have a means to address those and therefore remain accountable. In that way, you are minimizing whatever liabilities that may incur as a result of your research, and at the same time you do not waste the time and resources, your own time and your own resources, but also the time and resources of your research participants. And consequently, as you are progressing, therefore, in your research work, then there's that trust, no, and that trust and credibility enables you to establish strong and reliable relationships with possible sponsors, with your relationship between the investigator and the sponsor and the participant, and naturally, no, since this research might be given or will be shared to the public, so the public also gets that trust and will trust that your research is reliable. So you have that better relationship. And last but not the least, no, you are protected. You are protected from the liabilities, and also the ethics review committee is also protected from liability. Observing therefore what, because since we have a law already on research ethics, the RA 10532, and also in terms of the privacy, no, and confidentiality, so the Data Privacy Act of 2012. What are the components of ethics that you need to consider in your research? First of all, you always keep in mind that you're doing this research because for the pursuit of good, and that is the good of human beings. So in your outcome should always be towards that particular kind of point of view or attitude. And also that when you're performing research, credibility is very important. And when we say credibility as a scientific research, then your research must be scientifically sound. In other words, your research problem is very clear, clearly articulated, and then your proposed methodology is it's aligned with whatever is your research problem or your research objectives, and that the outcome or the process of processing your data and the way that your data is going to be shared is also very sound and is aligned with your research objectives. And then there is that always attitude, no, of valuing the participants, no, so especially if your research will therefore involve human in participation, even just by simple interviews, even kung random interviews, no, or much more kung there is focus group discussions, then you have to value, no, you always consider that you are not just going to get data from them, you also have to value their integrity, that they are an important research, therefore you have to respect them also, and therefore take good care also of your participants. And then your competence as a researcher, are you the one are you competent enough to do the research? Do you have the credibility or the necessary qualifications, no? So you cannot presume that because you want to do research, you can just go ahead and do it without any background or any skill that also supports your capacity to perform and complete the research. And you have to understand, therefore, that whatever research you're doing, there are consequences also or impact onto the community. Therefore, you have to consider also what is your relation. What's going to be your relation to the community and your stakeholders? Is there going to be a direct or indirect benefit that can be that the community can receive or can derive from your research outcome? And then, of course, other sensibilities that you need to consider nowadays, no, especially on gender and culture. No, if you are you have to consider the variability of vulnerable groups, no? So when you are doing or recruiting even your participants, and when you are doing your research, you have to be very sensitive also in the context of your gender composition. So, for example, when you select your participants, no, dili lang ka always you also need to look like a gender kanang balance, no, in your representation among your human participants. So that's one consideration or sensitivity, or cultural sensitivity. So if you have if you're especially if your study involves communities that are tribal communities or indigenous groups, no, and you are involving their community, so you have to consider their sensibilities, no, be sensitive to their culture also. And of course, last but not the least, that there should be an approval from the Research Ethics Committee, REC, or from the, so there has to be always a clearance. Whatever research pursuit that you will have, there's all has to be a clearance first, so that that means you are, when you get the clearance, that means you can proceed your research because all of the ethical considerations have already been considered in when you make your proposal. The REO is the office that was established in 2018 by the university president, that was established to implement the policies of the especially the University Research Council, which is the decision-making body in terms of research activities in the university. And the REO will be responsible for those guidelines that are specific for or pertaining to research ethics. And then, of course, the office will need to provide that support and administration, especially in the carrying out of the tasks related to ethics review, particularly the review and approval process for all research in the university. The REO has two review boards, review committees. One for the human participants and human subjects, and that is the Research Ethics Board. And the other one is maybe not very related to you or pertinent to engineering, is if you are involving animal testing or use of animals as your subjects, particularly vertebrate animals, then there's the IACUC or the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee responsible for the review process. The Research Ethics Board or the SAREB, by its policy is the research ethical reviewer, okay, for all university research activities, and also serves as a advisory to Kuro in terms of guidelines or what are necessary protocols in terms of research ethics. So the board is responsible in providing independent, competent, and timely ethical review. That means in that part of review, the review is usually conducted as blind review. You don't know who are the members of the board that are reviewing your proposal, but they will give you your specific comments to help you improve, or to grant you that ethical clearance, for such research project. So in the REB, believes in these values of safeguarding the dignity, the rights, the safety, and well-being of all actual or potential research participants, and also believing in the principles of autonomy, meaning to say the research participants should have the right to voluntarily participate and also to voluntarily withdraw from participation. So that's the autonomy there. And beneficence and justice refers to the principle of whenever we are looking at the review or at the ethical considerations of the review, is it always meant for the good of the participants? Are the benefits should be clear enough and should be more than the risk involved in the research, risk that may cause harm to your participants. So the purpose of the review process is, again, simply to really protect the human participant and, of course, naturally, the community in general. So the review will therefore help determine the acceptability of your research. That means ethical acceptability, most importantly, its worth, its usefulness, and its credibility. And naturally, the review process is not just for the reason of critiquing, critiquing or making comments. Sometimes when we receive comments, especially nowadays, that people sometimes freely just give comments without being requested or being asked, especially in social media, we always get that negative impression of comments. So we always take comments as like a negative, always having a negative impact on us. For ethics review, the comments or the review received on your proposal is really meant to improve your research, help you give more focus, give you direction, especially in terms of ethical considerations. So the categories for the REB review that your proposal might be receiving, there are 3 of these. The proposals that are either exempted from review or will undergo expedited or full board review. So we'll go to the distinction of each one further. When we say exempted, by the way, I'm going to use the word protocol here. When we say protocol, that refers to the study protocol or in directly referring to your proposal. So since it is stated as a study protocol, in other words, your proposal is written for ethics review as like of a guideline for what are you going to do, in terms of the scientific activity, research activity, as well as the ethical components of that activity. So when I say protocol here now, I'm referring to the proposal submitted for review. So when the protocol is assessed as exempted, it simply means that this proposal or protocol has no potential ethical issues. No potential. So that doesn't mean that there are no ethical issues. But based on the description of your procedure and your objectives and your background of the study, there are no potential ethical issues that are involved. When we say if we look at the meter here of what do you mean by no potential ethical issues, every research has its own level of risks, But for exempted protocols or protocols exempted from review, it is assessed as exempted because it is found that there is negligible risk, also from no to negligible risk arising from the conduct. So when an example of such a research protocol would be a protocol that involves a method of obtaining information collected from the public domain. So an internet or database research, your primary data is obtained from a database research, which means the data itself does not give you identification of the participants. So it's already in public domain information. So everybody, it is already accessible. So that is considered a negligible risk. Okay. So your protocol will be undergoing when you submit your protocol, by the way, before it gets be exempted, it's going to be assessed first. There is a ethics filter in which you can also assess your own protocol whether it's going to be exempted or not. So once it is assessed to be exempted, then it's going to be reviewed by a member of the ethics board and just one reviewer or even the chair to determine if the criteria for exemption is met, and then you will get a letter of exemption. For expedited reviews, these are refers to protocols which has methodologies that involve minimal risk. What do you mean by minimal risk? Simply a risk that is common, not that when you say risk, minimal risk, that refers to the level of risk that you normally encounter in your day-to-day living, in your routine daily life activities. Di man gyud ta daily activities usually with always potential risk, but if that is managed as a day-to-day activity, then that is considered a minimal risk. So any procedure that involves that kind of level of risk can be categorized as expedited. So examples of those activities are when you are gathering, getting data from a questionnaire. When you are distributing a questionnaire to your selected participants, and then they submit or they answer your questionnaire. And then there are no vulnerable groups. An example of vulnerable groups would be underage, mga minors. Those are considered vulnerable groups. So there are your type of participants you want to participate do not involve such kind of vulnerable groups. And of course, even if there is minimal risk, then it will still require consent, no, express and informed consent among the subjects in your research. Okay. So those are certain general examples lang, or a general picture of a proposal that will receive an expedited category. Now, the expedited word in this classification does not mean expedite in terms of shortness of the or the length of time for your proposal to be reviewed. Expedited simply means reducing the number of reviewers needed for that for a full review. So, for example, for an expedited review for undergraduate or graduate proposals, only one research ethics board member will fully read that one. Okay, and then there is a document in which you are of which your proposal is going to be assessed. No, there are criteria in which it's going to be assessed if it passes ethical considerations. For internal or externally funded research, especially for faculty members, so internal funded means you're you are recipient of mga research grants initiated by Kuro, or if your research is funded by DOST, so that is already an externally funded research. It will take 3 members only for your proposal to be reviewed. That is the context of what we mean by expedited. The longer one, the category which usually serves a longer period of review, not because of the length of time, but also because it takes a more number of persons to review the proposal, is the proposal which receives a category of full review. And these are proposals that have greater than minimal risk involved in the conduct of the research, particularly if there are vulnerable groups involved, if there's a physical intervention. Researchers from medicine or nursing usually will merit this, because they are involved in vulnerable groups. They may involve also clinical trial of drugs or a therapy, so there's a physical intervention. We require therefore a direct interaction with the participant. Then that proposal will merit a category full review, and therefore would need really the full informed consent of the potential participant or the subject. So for a full committee review, it usually involves 5 research ethics committee members who will review, and then aside from the individual review per member of the REC, they will also congregate and discuss. There will be a meeting, a full committee meeting, where each they will discuss their comments and give an assessment of the merit based on the merit of your protocol. Okay. So there is a bigger body that requires also a meeting. So it usually takes longer because you have to wait for the reviewers to finish reviewing and gather their information, and then you have to wait for them to meet, for them to all meet as with a quorum at least, and then you have to wait for the decision and for the feedback for you to receive. So it all starts, the process all starts by you submitting your documents, We have all of this information that I'm going to show you now are all available in the website or the web page, of the Research Ethics Office. So the list of these documents I will not explain individually right now. You can all see them in the website under the downloadables in the website of the Research Ethics Office. So all of this has to be submitted by email to the Research Ethics Office. I'll explain to you now the whole process in more detail. So the first process involves you submitting of course, your proposal to your department, of which you are going to defend your proposal, right? And the scientific or technical panel from your department or from your own college will assess the scientific merit of your research design, for your proposal. So if it is scientifically sound, therefore it will be recommended for review. If not, then of course you go back to the process of revision, and then you defend again your proposal before it gets an approval from your technical or scientific panel. So your technical scientific panel usually is made up of members of the faculty under your department or other experts that they will invite. So once your proposal gets that acceptance, and then it's going to be recommended for review, and then in this case, the initial determination of the category of your proposal is going to be determined, no? Because part of your documents you're going to send is an ethics review filter, and then it will help you and the department assess what is the level or category for your review, no? So if the department chair will give, of course, necessarily give the endorsement of those titles or proposals that have passed through the scientific panel or technical panel in your department or your college. But you are going to personally submit the documents yourself. As a principal investigator, you are considered as the principal investigator. You're going to be the one to fulfill all the documents that are going to be supposed to be submitted, no? And then with the necessary signatures fulfilled, and all the forms also fulfilled. So once it is received from the REO staff will determine whether all documents have been submitted or you already completed your requirements for submission. Then it goes now to the proper categorization, no? So you will have a proper assessment whether the proposal is going to be exempted, expedited, or will undergo full committee review. If some of the documents are missing, then you will get a feedback, no, that these are the documents you are missing, or this document is still missing in terms of some parts are not answered. So you're going to get the feedback, and you are advised therefore to immediately comply, no, or fulfill those missing parts of your document or missing documents that are needed. Okay. Then the process of initial review starts, no? Once the REO determines what is the category, then it's going to be sent to the reviewers themselves. Your proposal is going to be treated as a package. You will have each receive a package number, and that is your identifier, no? So for any correspondence that you would ask regarding to follow up the state of your proposal, you need to always cite your package number. That is for easy referral. Okay. Now, so if your proposal is categorized now as exempted, so once it is exempted and it's successfully exempted, then you will be given a certificate of clearance or a letter of exemption. And once you receive that, then that means go. You're good to go with your research activity. If your paper or proposal is assessed as either expedited or full board review, and that is because there is a minimal risk involved or greater than minimal risk involved, and it involves direct participation of human participants, then they are automatically, or they're usually determined as either expedited or full board review. Of course, if your proposal involves animal use of animal subjects, then it will be delivered to the IACUC, or for most of the research proposals, it will be delivered to the REC, or Review Ethics Committee. Okay. If it is expedited, then it will be given to a particular person, or usually the chair also, or a particular reviewer, and in which there are a number of days given for that process. So, and before that, once the review of the reviewer is submitted, then you will be given back a feedback of the review, what is the decision on your paper, and you will receive that feedback by a notice of panel action. The same thing with full board review, no? If your paper is designated as a meriting full board review or full committee review, then your proposal will be distributed to the members of the board, and the board will take time to review. Will give time for the board to review individually. They will conduct a meeting to assess and make a consensus decision on what is the action that you're going recommended for your proposal. Okay, so if your proposal that you if you receive comments for your proposal that needs revision, then you have to do the revision for that matter. No, so you're given a number of days for you to comply with the revision. And then once you finish your revision, you resubmit your application. And then if it is expedited, your initial review is expedited, then the resubmission will also be expedited, no? So it will be re-reviewed again. Once you complied with your with all the requirements, and then it is acceptable now to the reviewer, then therefore no revisions are required, then you will be given a clearance, ethics clearance. If for the same thing for a full board, full committee review protocol, if your revisions are also going to be reviewed by the same committee that initially reviewed your protocol, if there are no more revisions and the committee is satisfied with your revisions, then it will be decided as approved. Then you will receive a certificate of ethics clearance. If there will be still revisions that need to be done again, then it will be you have to do the revisions again and then resubmit. So you can actually have second or third resubmission in that case. So one thing lang na ako lang is I stress here is in the process. Really, the process is the research ethics is really very one of the very important issues magod sa research ethics review process is the length of time. We have to take note that really the initial review for your paper in terms of ethics is actually start already in your technical panel. No, so we are going to equip your advisors and even all faculty members who will be sitting as technical panel to have the capability of assessing already the ethical considerations, so that the ethical considerations are already really almost complied, even at the level of the department technical panel. So once you submit it for the REO, there are going to be minimal revisions that will be asked of you, and then the process will be expedited. So here are just there's no more time, I think, so but most of the researches in the engineering usually merit exemption, and also a number of you or the proposals receive a category of expedited. Very rare ang full board review because you don't usually involve mga vulnerable human subjects in that case, unless of course one of your parts a part of your research involves those, so it will therefore be as full committee review. But usually exempted yan. When we look at the exemption, we decide your exemption based on this criteria, of course, the human participants, non-identifiable. If your data involves non-identifiable data, then that is exempted, meaning to say there are no names involved. It's just general figures that are given, so there are no identification. If there is no direct interaction with human participants, if your research involves any of the 5 here, that is considered exemptable. If your method of data processing or data collection involves this process of survey, visual recording, or publicly available data, as long as the participants remain anonymous or the confidentiality is maintained, then exempted yan. So if the collected data is going to be anonymized or de-identified, it could be exempted already, can be received meriting exemption, or if not, expedited review. But of course, you have to have a data protection plan in order to preserve any occurrence of breach of data security. Somebody might steal and then reveal your data. So there has to be that data protection plan. And of course, there are no foreseeable risk or harm or discomfort to your human subjects. So you are going to assess the level of risk in your paper by any of the following items. Okay, so physical stress, psychological stress, conflict of issues, etc. And if the risks are minimal or not, these are not applicable or will not exist in your research, then for sure your research proposal will merit exemption from review. So okay, I explained already this one. When we review your protocols, these are the elements we usually in the form that you will receive. These are the things that we normally assess your protocol or review your protocol. So from the research design included into the inclusion criteria to the data collection and the duration of participant involvement. You will know more of this once you get the form itself. And then in terms of ethical, then this is the reason why there are a lot of elements that need to be looked at. I don't have time anymore to go to the individual explanation of this one. We will do this in another occasion, which we are going to host sa REO, so that you will get more. If you want really to be specifically assisted in complying with the protocol submission. And then one important element, especially even if you have questionnaires or in simple interviews, is the informed consent form. You cannot get always the data by just asking right away a human participant. You have to first explain to them why are you getting their answers, or why are you asking them to respond to your research as a participant. So these are the elements in the consent form that you are going to explain, and for the potential participant to understand and know before the person concedes, and gives the consent to participate in your research. So for engineering researches, commonly for data gathering involving human participant, it usually comes in the form of surveys, interviews, and focus group discussion. So you will follow this template. You can find this again in the REO website. So you'll be guided in how to write your informed consent form. Of course, you have your final decisions. So either your protocol may be given an approval, so that means you will get an ethics clearance right away. But if there are revisions to be done, it may be minor or major modifications. And of course, explanation or required modifications will be presented in that feedback. And then worst case, of course, if your protocol deserves a disapproval, and the objections and reasons will also be explained if your is disapproved. I will not explain anymore this one, so I can give you these notes so that they can be shared with you by Ma'am Yaying and for your individual reference. And what are the things we need to look at when we approve your proposal or your protocol. And then that's the decision. This is the timeline of these 14 working days to review for the reviewer, and then 7 days after the committee meeting. You have 30 days to work on the revisions before your next resubmission. The same process actually goes for faculty researches, if either it's internal or externally funded. If it is externally funded, then there has to be already an approval. And then there's especially from the funding agency, and then if it is with revisions, then of course you'll go to the system, whatever is the system of your external funder. For internal funding, of course, we have our own system mechanism for reviewing the technical soundness or scientific soundness of proposals that are funded by the university. So if it's either our review ethics board or IACUC, depending on the type of research. And again, the same process is followed. You submit your documents for application for review. Then the review process will start, and then either it will be with modifications, either minor or major, will be disapproved or will be approved. So if it is with modifications, then the whole cycle again renews until you get that certificate of ethics clearance. Okay. Now, give me. I hope I actually exceeded my time, but just for this one, kasi I think this is very significant for you, especially now that you cannot do your individual face-to-face. If you have research that involves face-to-face or gathering of data through questionnaires or survey or focus discussion group. Since we are doing, if we are employing online digital tools, this itself presents another layer of ethical issues, Manggod, no? Because of the fact that you cannot verify the identity or whatever, for example, the age, of your participant, because you're only relying on their online presence, so there's a lot of ambiguity, and therefore the risk that may be involved there because of that minimal interaction. So you have to still be mindful of these issues, very much more mindful of these issues, and you have to make sure that you have your procedures to safeguard the rights of the participants and protect them from harm. These are the questions that you need to consider, therefore, in your proposal, when you ask for their participation, the manner of your recruitment. Since it's online, how are you going to recruit it through online? You cannot just approach them. Unlike in the face-to-face, you can just approach them while they are walking in the street, probably, no? So how are you going to recruit them? How are you going to obtain their informed consent? Okay, how are you going to even explain to them what are they getting into? And then you have to make sure that their identities are anonymous. Okay, you have to anonymize them. Either give them a code number or give them a pseudonym. If your behavior that you are measuring is public, and the questions are geared, and some of your behavior is maybe private, so make sure are there expectations of privacy in terms of what is going to be disclosed, in terms of the responses. Okay, so observe specific measures and inform the respondents, and that they should realize that their data is going to be used for research and may be disclosed, but they will not be identified. Okay, their privacy will be protected. Take a special mention about participation of minors. Please do them with extreme care. Make sure that you really obtain also their parental consent, because they cannot be the informed consent cannot be obtained directly from minors, because being minors themselves, you have to first obtain also their parental consent. So you have to go through the process again of the informed consent of the parents. But as much as possible, if you can do without the involving minors, then para you minimize your the level of worry that you are going to or level of safeguard in your protocol that you're going to make. So please make sure that the research via the internet involves minimal risk, or even below minimal risk. So privacy and confidentiality by using pseudonyms or modified quotes. You do not present data by verbatim, perhaps, but maybe paraphrased. So that your data cannot easily be searched on by search engines. So probably when you store even your data in the cloud, it has to be encrypted, so the data privacy or data security is still assured. And it would be a big help if somebody in your study team is expert on those technical requirements or issues requiring internet security and safeguards. Okay, it would be a very big help if you have a consultant also to enable you to have that data privacy and data protection. So for further questions, please refer to the website for the Research Ethics Office. So first click on the research banner, the banner there, and then with the Research Ethics Office, you can click on here, and then you will get your information. All forms or downloadable documents that you need to use for the application, including templates for the consent form, are available in the research downloadables. So sorry, nanobra akong time. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Dr. Karongoy.
I warned you about the barrage of information. Sorry. Kasi,
no worries, Sir Folks. Understandable. So, Dr. Karongoy is now ready to answer your questions. If you have questions, who would like to ask the first questions? There's lots of information there. Sir Fox?
Yes, ma'am.
Siguro while they are still preparing to ask their questions, may I ask that there are a couple of questions here from the pre-registrants.
Sure, ma'am.
One could be answered also by the department chair. Here is a question from a mechanical engineering student. No, it's very general, but he is asking what is the acceptable range to conform to ethics in the context of engineering studies? I think this is the question.
What do you mean by range? Range of?
Perhaps acceptable behavior, acceptable siguro, no? May I
number of what? Are you referring to the number of participants that is acceptable?
Siguro ipangutana nato ning nagpangutana ani
what do you mean by that?
Mr. Cruz? Are you here? Siguro no nga.
Siguro if we assume lang siguro if this is referring to the number of respondents or participants, no, you may involve, no. There is no limit, no. We don't limit really. We cannot limit how many participants you need. It depends upon ano yan. It is justifiable. If you need that number and it is justified and it is approved by your technical panel, then go. We cannot limit your number of participants. Oftentimes, the way when we review in terms of the sampling size, if you talk about sampling size, is we are cautious about the feasibility of obtaining that data that with that number of participants you are requiring, especially nowadays, especially during these times wherein the face-to-face contact is inhibited, no? So how are you going to obtain that number of participants through online presence? So you have to consider, therefore, that we cannot judge whether what is acceptable unless that there are implications in terms of feasibility or practicality of obtaining those number of participants that you need, okay? Or if it is representative of the you obtain that number based on a calculation of a sampling population based on a certain statistical tool. Therefore, that would be representative of the data you want to get. Okay, but most importantly, is your protocol assured or does your protocol ensure the protection of your participant, even in the recruitment itself, starting from the recruitment itself down to the protection of the data security. So those are just the elements. Yes, sir. Sir Herx, yes.
Just a rejoinder from what you have mentioned. With regards to a particular case wherein there is probably a concern regarding the number of participants declared in the protocol or in the proposal, and then IREB would have some doubts about it. In terms of number lang, Like, dako ra kaayo. What it mean nga? What it mean nga dili siya ma-approve? Like,
no, sir. It doesn't mean it's approved. What we are looking for is the justification. If it is logically justified, sufficiently justified in the protocol, why the number is like that, then no problem. If that's really what you want and what you need, and then it's justified and all of the provisions of protection of the data and the identity of the participants, privacy is also in place in your protocol, then there's no problem with the sampling size, sir.
Okay.
Ang among question naman ko usually is, kuan kanang mo lagi, no? The other layer is that, is it feasible now with an online presence only? And then, but more importantly, do you assure, no, if your recruitment process, your data protection process are all towards protecting the participant?
Actually, my question is focused on the number. So,
so wala so
dili
as long as it's justified, sir. It is justified. Okay. You have a justification, because oftentimes, sir, when we receive mga protocols, they just state the number without any justification. So the comment usually is, why do we need this number? Is this workable? That's usually our comment.
Okay. I understand.
Okay, sige. Thank you, Sir Pops.
Naday ko ilaing kuan.
Sige,
okay. Question, ma'am.
Sir,
I have noticed that katong exempted o katong the next level,
expedited, sir.
Expedited, both of them would only be reviewed by one member of the panel, right? Isara ang tanaw?
Yes. Sir, the difference is sa exemption is we'll only look for the elements for the criteria for exemption. Mura to siya. But for the expedited, we'll go through the entire protocol.
Okay. So, but both of them isara. Okay. Sige, thank you.
Okay. Sige, thank you very much. Dr. Abuso, I think, is raising her hand.
Thank you, Ma'am Yang. Sir Pops, we do know we have clearance, and we ourselves sa technical lugar na research, we know nga naatay gitawag og purposive sampling also. So this is just a rejoinder ka, Sir Herx, no? With the limitations of pandemic, we certainly agree nga, for example, sa among research kay per barangay, ang pinaka-ideal is this number, but because na pandemic, we can only do purposive. So muna ang murag rejoinder nako ni Sir sponsor ba na mag-online survey, we will deem it representative na ba to our case? Is it
purposive sampling is no problem, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
That's acceptable strategy as long, ma'am, as it is justified. There are clear criteria, inclusion and exclusion criteria, even in your whoever will say, kasi di ba you are selecting a participant based on a certain profile, di ba? Kaya mo man ang purposive sampling, it's not random. So there's a certain profile you are looking for in the potential participant you have. So you have just to be clear and justify your inclusion and exclusion criteria, even if it's purposive sampling.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sige. No more questions, Ma'am Bell?
Kanto lang, sir. I think ako na lang sa akong student kay nakasubmit na manggubitaw. Sige lang, raise akong hands, Ma'am Yang. So, saan siya pag na? Sorry.
Ay, click again yung raise hand, ma'am.
Okay, sige.
Click again yung raise hand.
Ako na lang, tindugan na lang. Itug mag-apon akong hands, good, ginukulor na. So, sir, kanina lang, sir, kaning nag-lodge naman, good, Mr. Pops. In fact, na ako naning napaambit ka, Ma'am Yaying, and kang Sir Herx, kay the Civil Engineering Department lodge sometime in July. So, running na, good, Mr. Waiting sa result. Wala pa ginigawa sa amo, sir. Kana lang.
I explained that sa that's the manggod among dilemma sa office, because there's a barrage manggod of researches since May pa, and then there were I don't know how, because this is my first year manggod, and when I entered there's already a lot of full committee reviews that were prioritized, and then since they submitted or lodged first. So we are doing it incrementally across by chronological na. So we are almost reaching mga kuan namin start namin sa July po. So for kanang exempted most of your proposals anyway are exempted. So kuan lang kanang actually you can do your initial work already for those that are initially exempted, but you have to get first that ang importante magod ang feedback so katong I hope this input can help you look back into or review again your protocol if there are those requirements in place because if ever you will receive a feedback that needs revision, you have already anticipated what are the revisions that are needed.
Nagsabot po ni Bin Sir ba regarding anang mag-deploy o dili pa man gid ta sure sa face-to-face with students. So I think Sir Herx ni maka-storya po siya ani. We were thinking manggod if we will just hire some personnel on the field to collect data, but unfortunately ang among challenge with ani sir is when we do data collection na mag-hire o somebody can mag-orient me, plus it's really it boils down to the limitation of financial constraints bitaw sir.
Yeah, that's right.
So kana mo na among pinaka-issue karon sir kay ang hope mangta namo nga bahalag sila lang pero dili gid sila mag-engage og tao and then na ay magtabang sa ilang outsider, pero I'm not sure kung sa patong nasabutan sa university about having students on the field outside sa campus na area.
Actually, I don't know how. There are ways to look at this. No, of course, these ways are not that easy. But no, pwede man mo mag-pool po the resources if you can just kasi if you are going to recruit by using other third-party recruiter in terms of data gathering, ma'am, you have to also include that in the protocol. So if you have an amendment, amended sa inyong protocol, you have to report that also. And then of course you still have to observe the safeguards needed for even for the external recruiter kasi you are still liable anyway to that third party. So if ever there is an adverse event, you are still liable to or accountable to that. So if there are already measures in place, you have your plan for that, then and then it is written in the protocol itself or in the amended, then yan. So it will go through with the review process as long as it's in place na gid siya ang imong production. But you can pool resources probably, if there are studies na more interrelated,
Sir, nagulat niya sa KSSR. Maka-award na po tayo.
Well, kanapod na so funding.
Pero nice suggestion, Sir Dean. Basin, Dean, pwede ni mo to i-share itong nasturyahan din?
Dili, lahi ni ako. Akong i-throw kang Sir Fox. You're saying as long as ma-actionan sa department o sa research advisor ang kapong comment ang first comment sa review, pwede na sila makapadayon, lugar?
No, sir, you have to resubmit pa. Resubmit with the revisions. But if you have already your kasi you are given 30 days man. So if you are able to finish the revisions less than within the third day, after the third day, mas mapaspas ang process.
So mula gito kay anyway, wala pa man. Annabel, am I correct no? Wala pa ginigawas.
Wala pa inigawas bisag isa. Tapos wala pa
actually I'm looking at some of the initial assessments sa uban bitaw sir. Especially ang concern akong expedited. Manggod. Kasi ang problem ako sa some of the protocols sa expedited na ba kay katong kuan sir, dili klaro ang online safeguards sa kuan. Protecting the privacy and even the manner of recruitment nga matago. So dili well defined ang procedure. Di kuan bitaw nga ang iyang system of safeguarding the participant while
during online recruitment. Can we just kay kuan mo ganino? This is really a new thing kining online, nag-online na ba? Can we just kuan kanang directly provide kanang klaro dagid nga help sa atong mga
guidelines
researchers
guidelines
not really guidelines but really guide guide gid ba? Like template or something
this,
or
I think it's difficult for us to give the guide. Katong akong gi-share sir, katong guidelines lang. This actually taken from the national guidelines, national ethical guidelines. You can be guided by that, but for the specifics, mangod, like how will you do the data protection? What is your through cloud, unsa itong mga encryption na it will be best on sa investigator level, because and then you might actually discuss this sir among you because you might have the similar process. So that means you can establish your own harmonized guidelines. No?
If I may say something, Sir Herx, no? Perhaps we can invite siguro at another session, we can invite people from the ComStad to help us kanang how to encryption of our data, so that the things that Dr. Tarungoy mentioned in his presentation earlier could be addressed also, because I think yes, I understand it's difficult for us, especially since this is something new to us, kanang data collection through online methods. So perhaps another session we could invite somebody from the ComStad kanang kwan lang on what to do, so that if we are storing our data in the cloud, so that still we are protecting the privacy and confidentiality of the data. Kana siguro kay murag.
Yes.
This leads me to sir na probable activity sa REO is to we'll be looking for a consultant who can give some what are the practices that are used for online recruitment, so that it can give us an idea how to apply it. So maybe we can look for experts also and give us a product training or a workshop on doing this,
Right, siguro the research ethics office can invite also the students from engineering to that.
And then
kay Sir Pox katong sa civil, Sir Pox, in behalf lang sa civil department ang among gi-follow gid sa protocol kay katong na-experience nako sa USAID ang iyang format ito namo gi-pattern kay wala pa man lagi, so pero it's still correct man si Ma'am Yang, we do not know pa unsa na mga behind sa inscription nga protection namo kana mo lang na ang among limitations kay pag-present na mo to kay ang flow lamang sa confidentiality, we did not still know the other parts of that nga kailangan i-protect na lang. Thank you.
Okay, sige. Thank you very much. I hope we will be invited to that session soon, to be able to gain more knowledge and skills on how to encrypt our data.
Actually, all of kami Sadbaya, we are still how do we are thinking of creative ways to think. We think ways ingon pa sa BDO.
Correct. Sir Fox, another question here. This was sent to me directly, but the student would like to ask, would it be unethical to do the same research conducted 10 years ago to obtain or more recent data? No, by same research, she meant doing exactly the same methods done by the researchers who conducted the study 10 years ago. So, ethical ba daw kuno? Unethical or ethical to do the same study?
I don't. That's a very first time ko na
maybe I can help.
I understand. I can understand the context. Yes, Ma'am Ann, if you have something you can share.
Nami gibuhat anay na himuan na Ma'am Yang sa civil department before, but we asked permission. I think mo na tong decision before nga. We asked the previous researcher to write a letter of consent based on the recommendations sa previous study, so that it's not redundant, it's not how to say carbon copy, but rather extension and based on the recommendation. And if new methodology can be incorporated and something like kana lang siguro.
I agree.
It helps.
I think it would be quite serious if it is carbon copy put there has to be like an innovation or an improvement from a previous study. You might probably adapt some of the procedures that were done, but there could be a new, some newer methods would also just to because it has to be that stagnant, Mangod. It has to be an improvement of a previous body of knowledge, Mangod. And of course, the consent, that from the previous from the previous investigator to use mismo ang iyang methodology. Kaya ba ng proprietary iyang intellectual property. And if it's published, Raba, if it has been published, that's another layer of permission you have to get from the publisher. Or if it's going to be directly copied, unless it's going to be just a citation, okay lang yan.
Okay. Sige. There's another question, perhaps a last question for this session. No? A question from a faculty member, although sent to me directly, but I would just like to ask. No, this is regarding submission of protocols for review. Is it still okay to submit or to file, to apply for your protocols?
There's no it's 24 only in the whole year yan. Pwede submission. There are no closure of dates of submission.
Perhaps this is one ma'am kanang nag-start ng implementation.
I think papangutanan nato si Ma'am Julie ani. Ma'am Jul. So nag-implement na ay mao ba ni Ma'am Julie?
Lumang.
Ala, i-anonymize man ka Ma'am Jul, ala ka.
So, the group is about
discussion man sad.
Anyway, may problema.
The group is about to propose pamamyangs. Wala pa yung
right.
implementation.
No problem, ma'am. If it's any time can be submitted.
Okay.
Well, there are no windows of submission. No. It's all fun. Usually we just go through a cycle because, like for example, undergraduates, they usually have this research class at this semester. So by the end of the semester, when they submit the proposal, they magdagsa bitaw dayon.
Okay, thank you very much. Because the students are expecting there's a deadline. So
no, there's no deadline.
Here. Okay, thank you.
Sir Fox.
Yes, sir.
Do we have directions on adding more reviewers so that it could perhaps help?
Yes, sir. We have plans. We have plans of doing some restructuring to by the initial concept is establish mismo RECs by school or college.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Sir Pops,
yes.
Kanang for the record lang kay wala ko kapas din na naman ko meeting. So are we if the protocol that we have submitted based on the July na mga premise na no one is allowed in the campus, no one is allowed outside to data collect. If in the eventuality, sir, that our university will allow certain protocols na to the pandemic that students can go out or can visit the campus, are we still going to submit, sir?
Yes, ma'am. If there essentially if there are amendments to the protocol, it has to be reported and submitted also. So there's another form to use that for whatever amendments or changes you have done to your protocol. Diba, Ma'am Yaying, no? Naman tayo for any changes in the.
And for the civil engineering department, one group I think got dissolved because of the limited number of students. Kaya na may nag-back out na, sir. Financial constraints sa pag-eskwela padayon. So what we did is we dissolved one group and then add the name. Yeah. So that's the one of the concern of 3 groups yata, sir, where the 3 members are reassigned. We have to change the author. So amendment niya po siya, sir. No?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
By the way, Annabelle or other faculty members, if we remember the presentation of Dr. Heidi Rabanes, we can actually apply for
SSR, sir?
No, that's for students.
Research activities outside of campus. There is a process. during the process. But
ang amo naman go submit sir kang Dr. Talongoy last time is we assume 0 sir. Di ba nang yung ka plan A, plan B. So we did the plan A, no outside. So mag-amendment pa dahil sir.
Okay.
So it's suffice to say that your plan A for like in the context of an online, it will be safer at this moment because when we talk about face-to-face, limited face-to-face, dugay pa na siya, mahitabo mong
Yes, sir. But I think Sir Herx is suggesting something. Sorry, Sir Herx, padayon, sir.
Kapag lagi, like, there are katong guidelines presented by Ma'am Heidi that could be possibly be used or availed with just in case yun nga kailangan nitong pugawas.
Yes, sir.
But there are things nga ako makita, like for example, like kung maabot na sa ako ang papel, I will really ask for the IREB clearance. Okay, importante maguna siya, no nga.
Correct.
Dili ko mo allow kung wala pagid siya migoto sa process. So inana ba? So the university really has these ways that we can continue with our research. But at the same time, administrators are also it's our responsibility to ensure that all of our policies are followed. But for the ma-ensure bito na ito nga safe na tanan. So mo na ga-connect siya tanan sa akong tanan.
Sir Dr. Tarungoy, sir naitabok man good sir kay because we are really lagging of time while waiting. What we did is just make sure that the dean will allow us or disallow us to a certain degree the protocol if the like IREB. So because wala man, then we did not go out and we did not deploy any survey pa. We're really waiting for the IREB. However, for the meantime, na-rationalize man po namo sa team that it's because nag-rain man good sir, sige ulan. It's not good also to do collections during of these kinds of rainy seasons kay interruption siya sa among mga survey and all. So, medyo nami clearance for the lag of time. On the other side, what we just did now is nag-simulate me with dummy data. Dummy lang sa, sir. Mura naming nag-chapter 4, but not the real data. Just to have time for that. Kung maabot na ang among data collection, whatever IREB recommends, we can easily fast-track our work because we already did the active files for analysis, even if wala pa ang data. Kana lang, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Sige.
Do we have some more questions? Perhaps also some questions, residual questions for Dr. Rabanes as well, no? The ones that we were not able to ask when after Dr. Rabanes' presentation earlier. Naapa ba kanang labig di ta katulog nga dili nato mapangutana? Wala naman, hilom naman. Kaya ko na siguro, tinod po na magkapit ba? Okay. So if there are no more questions, so siguro on behalf of Dean Herx, I would like to express my appreciation to the Dean for Research, Dr. Heidi Rabanes, and the Research Ethics Coordinator, Dr. Faustino Jr. Tarongoy for their valuable contribution to our researcher onboarding session. My gratitude also, of course, goes to all the students and the faculty members who attended this session. No? So there are over 100 participants for this session, and thank you very much for your participation and active participation at that. Now, I think the session has been effective. I think, personally, has been effective in meeting its purpose, which is to provide the necessary venue for a discussion on the policies, procedures, and guidelines for research safety and compliance success. Hearing and learning from this morning's speakers, I hope, have informed and provided guidance to all of us here on how to implement our research protocols effectively and ethically, and especially during flexible learning. I hope that the takeaways from this research onboarding session will further deepen our commitment to promote integrity in research by abiding by regulations and guidelines. And I hope this will stimulate our current and future research work. So thank you very much, everyone. Clap, 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 Deta. Virtual clap to everybody. And have a great day. Bye-bye. Thank you for
Salamat kay
joining.
Salamat kay Sir.
Thank you.
Sir Prof, salamat kayo.
Wala picture, ma'am.
Ay, hala.
Alam mo, Heidi,
Ma'am Chris. Ma'am Chris,
yes,
magpa-picture ta.
Ay, ma'am.
Sige, can we ask all cameras to be,
Lagi. Ma'am Chris, mag-picture ka?
Mugawas akong naong, Clar.
Dili,
Ay, sorry. sorry.
Picture lang yan.
Picture ba ka si Chris?
Ikaw na lang siguro, ma'am yan.
Ako? Sige, there are 5 kabuok, 4 na lang. Nagamay na lang ako, 4 na lang. Kanina 5 to kabuok ka, kuan, sige. 1, 2, ready? Wala lagi ka, Ma'am Bell. 1, 2, ready? Go. Smile. Okay, next. Kuan, smile lang gyapon mo, ayaw pagkuan, kay dabig na mo diri sa kuan. Okay, another. 1, 2, ready? Smile. And last. 1, 2, ready? Smile. Okay. Sige. Thank you very much for coming. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.